What's up, guys? So today we're gonna be reacting to Force Gaming's take on Dune, the MMO. Dune Awakening's big plans to reinvent MMOs. I'm pretty interested in this game. I have not read the book. I've only watched the movie, the first part movie. I don't remember when the second part comes out, but it's coming out soon. So yeah, this is supposedly going to reinvent MMO, so I'm pretty interested in what they got. So let's dive right in the video.
Hey everyone, what's up? I am back again with an update for Dune Awakening, the upcoming survival sandbox MMO that famously
Okay, so it's survival sandbox. That's something.
said it's going to support
Well, that's not new, but yeah, that's interesting that it's going to be a survival sandbox.
thousands of players in a vast shared open world. The game was first
that's
revealed
interesting.
officially about a year ago in August 2022 at Gamescom, and while it had an interesting initial pitch, I mean, 1,000 players in an open world sounds too good to be
1,000 is a lot. I wonder, I wonder how they're gonna handle it though, because they'd have to optimize it like really well. Like I don't even know, like ArcAge. What's the max player count for ArcAge? Because I've seen like 200 players in one area. It could be more. I don't know. World of Warcraft, I don't know what the max is. Like BDO, they're gonna have a 300 versus 300 soon, and like even 50 versus 50 or 20 versus 20 is already kind of very unoptimized. So I don't know how they're gonna handle this.
be true, right? Beyond that, though, they were rather light on details. The good news, though, is since then, we've learned a lot more about the game. Now, one of the biggest sources of new information comes from a video interview.
I bet this is gonna be like Star Wars, like probably. I've never played any Star Wars online games, but well, Dune is space themed, so yeah, I don't know. I might like it, I might not like it.
With PC Gamer.
So Dune Awakening is a survival, open world, massively multiplayer game. It is a game where players are invited
Alpha
to
footage.
explore the world of Dune. They involve themselves in politics.
This is the first time I've watched this, by the way. I've heard of Dune Awakening, but I haven't really watched any videos about it.
in intrigue. They involve themselves in combat. They have to survive on the most dangerous planet in the universe.
So that is the basic sales, the elevator pitch of the game. We know it's survival sandbox. They are throwing the word MMO in there. And as I mentioned at the top, that's largely due to this like seamless open world that they say supports thousands of players.
When Dune Awakening begins, you are a castaway on the planet in the deep desert, and all you have is a knife that you've made out of scrap metal. By the end of the game, perhaps you're running a guild. You have a fleet of vehicles, ornithopters flying in formation, sandbikes cruising across the desert beneath them, tanks kicking up a cloud of dust as you drive to a spice blow, and you
It's
see in the distance
interesting.
another guild coming towards you, and just as you clash, you hear the rumble.
So, I guess it's gonna be PvP focused, huh? That's interesting. I like it. If it's gonna be PvP focused, I'm gonna enjoy it probably.
So that's a good like high level overview of what the experience of progression of starting from scratch. They say you got nothing but a knife and you're sneaking into camps and you're taking out enemies and stealing their water. We know that the water is going to be a big part of the survival mechanics. But then after the starting, they then progress to the more advanced stages where you're flying around these ornithopters. You've got ground vehicles. You're going towards these spice locations where spice is going to be the super valuable resource that's tied directly into player progression. At the same time, there's another guild coming. You're engaging in combat, but all of this ruckus ends up summoning up this sandworm, engulfing the area. And I think
That's
that is really
interesting.
cool. It's just a really cool sounding system. Something else that's really cool is getting word from today's sponsor. Wizard 101
Oh,
is a
okay.
massively multiplayer online role-playing game developed and published by
What the
King's
hell
Island
is this?
Entertainment. This old school MMO, which first released back in 2008, still to this day has
What?
very positive user ratings
never heard
on
of
Steam,
this.
and it has received many updates over the years. In Wizard 101, you take on the role of a student who must save the Spiral, which is
Is
the
this
universe the game is set
Harry
in
Potter?
from many threats. The game is divided into a multitude
This
of
is
worlds
Harry
with
Potter
distinct
MMO.
areas represented by these islands suspended in midair within spheroid atmospheres. You'll create your very own wizard and embark on wizard school adventures, battle
Yeah, that's
enemies
Harry
by
Potter,
casting
basically.
spells, using a variety of different weapons in turn-based combat, a system that's similar to collectible card games. The game is based around duels where two teams made up of 1 to 4 players or a AI enemies will take turns casting spells trying to achieve victory. To check out Wizard 101 for yourself, go ahead and use my link in the video description below. All right, now let's get back to the Dune Awakening interview.
Surviving on Arrakis means that you need to prepare for sandstorms, you need to find water, it's a constant threat against survival.
I wonder if this is like, I wonder how the solo experience is gonna be. So I'm probably gonna be playing it solo at first, and then I'm gonna hop in a guild later. That's probably how I'm gonna play it.
Beginning, it might just be water for yourself. In the end, you might need industrial levels of water because you have industrialized your base.
So there you go. They touch on the very fact. I mean, it makes sense, right? Dune, you got this big desert planet. Water is pretty darn important, and water management, as they say, is going to be a key element of this being a survival game. I'm really hopeful that they are really light on the punishing aspects of it for the individual player early on, because I've played survival games where it feels like if you're not chugging water every 5 minutes, you're gonna die. And I don't want that to be the case, even though it could be like lore appropriate or whatever. Gameplay wise and systems wise, that kind of
yeah,
level.
that's true. You can never really translate. It's the same thing with book to movie. You can never really translate everything one to one. You got to make some changes for it to be more appropriate. So yeah,
punishment can be just frustrating and annoying, getting in the way of the fun of the experience.
And the storms are an important part of survival as well. You have to find shelter in the beginning. You have nothing to your name. After a while, you will have a base, and then you will build a bigger base so that doesn't become as important. But then you always have to go out in the desert and make sure that you can compete against the desert. And every time you go out, you have to be careful of the worm. If you get caught by the worm,
I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy base building. I'm not that, I don't know, it depends on how good the system is. I've never been a fan of base building, to be honest. It's not my type of game. I would rather like build on my character and maybe pets and other stuff that's related to my character directly. Base building, I'll probably leave that to my guild leader or something. It depends. We'll see how the game goes.
there will be nothing left of you, and you will leave nothing behind.
So there's like a few key survival elements in the game. There is that water management system, but then there's also surviving the storms, which they briefly mention, and these storms will come in, provide enough of a threat that you will have to take shelter from them, be that shelter in something that you have built yourself, or shelter in, say, like a cave nearby, or some sort of a ravine or something. Keeping yourself hydrated, getting yourself out of the storm when a storm comes, but then lastly, the sandworm. This is going to be a regular, consistent threat in the game, and it pretty much.
I wonder if they're going to add like other bosses though, because I like I said, I've never read the books. Is the sandworm the only like monster, the only threat there? Because I would love if you know, the PvP system is similar to Arcade, where you like fight over this world boss, like see who gets the world boss. You like, you know, it's zerging pretty much. Well, I don't really like zerging. Like, I don't. They have to find a way to make it fair, because what's gonna happen? Like in Arcade, you know, you form an alliance with like 10 guilds against this one guild, and it's gonna turn out really, really bad. So yeah, they have to actually find a solution for zerging. But yeah, it would be interesting if there were like multiple world bosses. I don't want it to be all like sandworms, because that's gonna get boring really, really fast. There has to be a PvE element to this game. It can't be all PvP. Unless it's not gonna be a true MMO. If it's gonna be like just Rust or you know, those kinds of games, just purely survival games that has multiplayer, I probably won't play it. But if it is a true MMO, I will play it.
Boils down to, if you kick up enough noise, if you make enough of a ruckus, the sandworm is going to appear and in some capacity will destroy things within an area. You know, in the cinematic trailer that they showed, you see the worm coming up and literally swallowing an entire facility, presumably
shit.
anybody within it. How does that like actually play out in the game?
Yeah,
it
like,
would be cool if
that was just cinematic, so it's gonna be different.
Worm comes up and actually consumes entire buildings. That would be cool if that's something they can actually translate into the actual gameplay experience.
With Dune, we have a particular focus on a style of combat that we like to call combined arms, and it takes all of the elements that players would expect from the books and the movies, and it puts them together in this great chaotic kind of experience. We have vehicle combat, we have abilities, that you might see in the great schools in the Dune universe. We have melee combat and we have range combat, and all of these things work
I'm interested in the melee combat.
together to create player versus environment, PvE kind of combat, as well as massive PvP battles for players to participate in. And
Perfect.
it's the combination of these things that really makes it feel like sandbox combat.
Exactly,
where players have the
exactly.
ability to pick their loadouts and see how they go into battle.
I absolutely love the sound of this, and I
Same.
actually initially, when I was first checking out this game when it was revealed last year, I don't think I realized at the time that they apparently aiming to go for something along the lines of a battlefield or of a planet side, what they call combined arms, where you have infantry combat and you have vehicular combat. You've got ranged weaponry on the infantry, which also have like
I've never played Battlefield or PlanetSide, so I don't know. I can't relate to this.
spells and abilities, and a lot of this will fit into like the lore of the Dune universe with these shields and things like las guns and different sort of weaponries. Melee weaponry is also a very important thing. 3 different tiers of engaging.
I just hope they don't like. So, what usually happens with games like these when there's like so many systems? It's usually like only one system is really good and the others are shit, or either all of them are shit. Because there's like too many, right? I hope they like put like the same amount of effort and care to all of the systems, so that it doesn't feel like shit when you like, vehicular combat feels really good, and then the melee combat, like the humanoid combat, feels really shitty, right? I hope they figure that out.
Combat at a large scale. I'll go back to that thousands of players that they reference. Are we talking about combined arms, thousands of players fighting with ornithopters flying and tanks going around blowing stuff up and infantry? Could be really, really cool though if they can actually deliver.
We have
they can
broad
pull it off.
spectrum of
It'd be really
combat
awesome.
capabilities. We have melee weapons like
I'm
knife.
very skeptical of the 1,000 players though. I really doubt it. Maybe 200. 1,000 is, I don't know. I don't think we have the technology yet to have 1,000 players.
And swords. We have ranged weapons. Then we have ground vehicles and air vehicles. They all come with configurable capabilities like las guns, rockets, miniguns, things like that.
So with this, we've got confirmation that there will be customization at the very least
That's
for the
good, that's
vehicles.
good.
I'd also read elsewhere in interviews that there will be customization for your own weaponry. Like you'll be able to do some sort of customization for your guns and for your melee weapons, presumably. That's great. Kind of expected with survival games, but it's good to get confirmation of that.
The world of Arrakis is full of political intrigue, and we have this fantastic concept from the stories called Canley. And Canley is basically the rules of engagement. It's this thing called the Great Convention that defines areas of the world where players are allowed to interact in different ways. So in Dune Awakening, players will have different areas of the world that are enabled for example, full player versus player combat, and areas that are safer, patrolled by Sardaukar troops and kept safe. Players really have this
basically safe zones and PvP zones, right?
opportunity within the sandbox to find the locations where they can fight with each other, or to stay in the locations where they're safer, right? And that's up to the player and how
That
they
makes
will
sense.
approach
That's
the
okay.
So that's essentially the lore, the world exploration for what are going to be full PvP zones and zones without PvP, and players are going to be able to choose, like for example, where you want to build up your base. Do you want to build up in a safe facility where there are troops and things are nearby protecting you from other players coming in and raiding and taking your stuff? Or do you want to go out into the wilderness where your stuff's more susceptible, but likely you will have greater and easier access to...
I don't think you can put... They should let people put bases in PvE zones, like, right? So like, I think the main... one of the main features of the game is raiding other bases. So it would be weird if you were allowed to put your base in a PvE zone where people can't raid you. So I think you can only put bases, or they should only let players put bases in PvP zones.
Higher value resources or currencies or whatever, and they're just saying like, hey, there's a lore reason for that within the world of Dune.
In Dune Awakening, we've got many different types of weapons from across the universe, drawing upon the books and the movies. Las guns, mauler pistols, we have scatter guns, pellet guns. In addition, we have all of the sort of melee weapons you'd expect to see, cryst knives and kinjals and short swords and rapiers. And in addition to that, of course, we also have abilities that players can learn through the great schools of the universe. such as Mentat abilities or Bene Gesserit skills. You can fight other players wearing Holtzman shields. There's a system involved where people will want to get close because the slow blade penetrates. And so you want to use melee to get through a shield. If people don't have shields, because shields draw the sandworm, you want to make sure that you use ranged weapons. So there's a real interplay between systems, between the way that shields interact with both the world and the environment with sandworms, and also how they interact in close personal combat.
Now, I'll be the first to admit, I do not intimately know the lore and history of Dune.
Same.
I've had many recommendations to read the books. It's a daunting task, but it's something I hope to get around to eventually. But nevertheless, I do know about this whole shield system where you've got these personalized shields, which will protect you from a lot of damage and a lot of range things in particular. But then up close melee combat is susceptible to those shields. So that's a cool balancing of things. This idea, if it did in fact work in the way where you could choose to have this shield active that's going to protect you from incoming projectiles, but then you'll be super susceptible to anyone coming in within range. They'll be able to basically just go through your shield like nothing. But then at the same time, having that shield active increases the threat or the likelihood or whatever kind of mechanic that is going to determine whether or not one of those massive sandworms comes.
Yeah, like I said, I hope it's not just sandworms. I hope if there's not any more monsters in the books or the movies, they should add something new, because it's gonna get really boring. If it's gonna stop at sandworms, I don't think it will work as an MMO. Because how the hell are they gonna make the game more interesting? Yeah, like I'm already thinking about it. This might not be an MMO at all.
Comes in and just completely annihilates an entire area.
Anytime that you step onto the sands of Arrakis, you risk drawing a worm. You can multiply that by driving vehicles on the surface. You can multiply that by using shields or suspensor belts. Holtzman technology will draw the worm.
Yeah, and that just further touches on it more, saying that there will be all these different things. You might want to do them because you might want to do vehicles so you can move faster. You might want to use shields to protect yourself. You might want to get into a gunfight because you're trying to take over this area or fight back other players. But all of this is going to play into increasing the potential for that sandworm to come.
Dune Awakening is built upon a foundation of 5 pillars. Survival, which is...
So we haven't got into the reinventing part. Like, all of these are good theories. Like, I guess 1,000 players is cool, but I don't know if they can execute that.
Obviously, everything you'd expect to see in a survival game. It's water discipline. It's the surviving the sandstorms that sweep across Arrakis.
I haven't really played a lot of survival games, so I don't know how I'm gonna take that. The water thing, the food thing. I hope it's not annoying.
We have politics and intrigue, which speaks to the faction gameplay of the game. It's about, siding with...
So the faction thing is interesting. The guild thing is interesting. Because that means there's going to be a lot of PvP.
Factions, thinking about how they work together, perhaps assassinating members of the other factions. Then there's infinite exploration. Infinite exploration, which is one of the things I'm most excited about.
Quote unquote infinite.
Over time. We have a concept called a Coriolis storm. And when it sweeps across the landscape, the sands shift, revealing new points of interest, hiding others, making the game...
Okay, that's cool, but... I don't know. I think it's infinite in terms of how many they can actually put in the game. So it's not actually infinite. Because, if the field changes because of weather... There's gotta be like pre-made like paths already, right? I don't think it's gonna be. I don't know. I haven't played No Man's Sky. It was advertised to be like an ever-changing game. I don't know if that's true. I've never played it. I don't know. It's really. It's kind of a gray area. I don't know how it's gonna work.
Every week. Then we have Combined Arms. Combined Arms is our combination of vehicles, melee combat, range combat, and abilities all working together to create a seamless sandbox combat experience. And finally, we have expression and customization, which is really more than just talking about like the visual expression and customization, which of course we have armor sets and clothing and a robust character creation. But in addition to that, it's really about play the way you want to play. Do you want to be a trader? You can do that.
Okay, that's cool.
Of course you can do that. Do you want to be a spy?
So if there's gonna be a trader, I can't really still say right now if it's gonna be an MMO or not.
Built into these pillars.
All right, so the 5 pillars of survival, it seems like it's going to be just about everything we expect. We'll go out for resources. We'll do all the crafting stuff. There will be base building, things like that. We'll manage our water, right? They talked about the politics. To me, that sounds very likely. Just like we'll probably be like choosing a faction that we side with, or even if we don't actually make an actual choice, we'll have quests to do for the different factions. And depending on the one that we side with, we probably build up some sort of a reputation. Maybe this leads to unlocked cosmetics or access to special vendors or something along those lines. The next 3 points are the ones that I think are certainly the most interesting. The endless exploration. We haven't mentioned this yet in the video, but yeah, the game is going to feature the system where these constant sandstorms are going to be happening, and those storms cover up areas and reveal additional areas. Now, I did read at one point that this is something that's supposed to be adjusting weekly. Whenever and however they happen, storms take place. Some areas that were previously explorable just the day earlier will be covered. New areas.
It's a pretty good like mechanic. But yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be quote unquote infinite. It's gonna change, but we know there's already, it's gonna cycle through, right? We're gonna see the same thing happen like in a few weeks. We're gonna see the same field basically.
Areas will be revealed, and this is also gonna play into sort of this race system where you will want to go out after a storm is done and the literal dust has settled. You will want to go out and see what new areas have been revealed, because in those areas will be loot and resources and access to spice, one of the primary things you'll be searching for. He then also mentioned the combined arms, which it sounds like Battlefield or PlanetSide, and if that's how it actually plays out, that is really cool.
Anarchy Online was a huge undertaking for Funcom at the time. We didn't always know what we were doing, but we were learning on the job to a large extent. As Funcom now has a long track record of MMOs, we know we're not new when it comes of challenges relating to server technology, relating to player population balancing, with relating to the RPG aspects of it. So everything that went into the earlier MMOs that we did comes into play here. We are taking it a lot further, those, because we're not traditional MMO in the sense that there's combat.
What did they make? I didn't quite catch who they were.
Is much more second to second and intense than you would find in an MMO, for instance.
So unsurprisingly here, they're just saying they're going to be leveraging their experience as a developer, as a company who has worked on many MMOs. If you're not aware, Funcom was involved with Conan Exiles, Age of Conan, and The Secret World, to name a few MMO projects and survival game projects that they have worked on in the past. And yes, they're going to be carrying that the lessons they learned through the lifespan of those games, and the lessons they learned in development, and then also maybe that plays into the idea of them going for that much larger scale with that vast open world that supports thousands of players. Every time I hear that, I'm just like, what exactly do you mean? How exactly does that play out? But you know, it is a cool concept. They're cool words to be saying. It's always the most interesting to see what that ends up actually meaning for the gameplay experience, whether that is detrimental to the gameplay experience, because yes, a lot of games that try to live up to that idea of supporting thousands of players and having so many number of players on screen at a time, they just end up with like terrible performance and all sorts of issues as a result of that. But technology is getting better, capabilities are getting better, and we hope that is a sort of promise that they can live up to. I'm really, really curious about what their plans are for supporting single player play, because I know a lot of people like to play these style of games either single player or in small groups, and how is that going to work with this idea of combined arms with all these vehicles and stuff? I mean, you presume it means that the large guilds are going to destroy any of these single player or small groups, but maybe they have ways
that's how it is in Arc Age. Like, I'm playing Arc World right now, the blockchain version, and if you're not part of a big guild, you're just fucked. I mean, you can make friends, but realistically, we want to join a big alliance so that you can like play with them. They won't kill you when they're doing stuff,
so that those players can still have an enjoyable experience and just try to avoid the roaming army of ornithopters and tanks just blowing everything up in a straight line.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I mean?
the single player experience or the small group experience is also very important, even in a game that focuses on the large scale experience. That's a problem that a lot of games, MMOs, can't really seem to fix. Can't seem to balance, rather, because you have to give a system to like the solo and the small scale players to be able to enjoy, but at the same time not make it as rewarding as the large scale. I mean, that's a fair trade, right? Like, you know, I could be farming this solo but at like a way slower pace, right? but not so slow that like it becomes boring or tedious. Like I said, it's hard to balance. So I'm pretty interested in what solution they have for that.
In our game, spice is obviously a very important mechanic, as it is in Frank Herbert's stories.
I know what spice
as players
is.
consume spice, they unlock the ability to level up skills in the game. And those skills, as you train them, you choose which ones to train. You have active skill training. As you train those skills, the more spice you consume, the more you're allowed to train. If you don't have a lot of spice in your blood, you obviously can't train as much. However, this also comes at the cost of becoming woefully addicted to spice.
So this sounds
What?
like a pretty way to approach character progression. You've got this resource in the world
You
called
can't like
spice.
overdose on spice.
So you need to get some of it in order to basically level up and activate new abilities. And then the further along this path you go, the stronger your abilities get, or you get access to better abilities. But consuming more and more spice ends up also having some sort of a drawback. They say you become addicted to it. I would assume that in terms of gameplay mechanics, that would translate into something like you need to have some sort of an upkeep, right? Like depending on how far along in progression you are,
Or
you're
you
gonna
get a
have to
debuff.
maintain a certain level of spice. And if it depletes past a point, probably you lose access to some of your progression. They take it away from you, or it could be
that would be
it could be the
interesting.
fact where you're only allowed to consume spice to a certain point, because if you get past a certain point, you get some sort of debilitating side effects, and that's how
you
they
get a
represent
debuff.
the idea of, hey, you can't have too much spice because then you become addicted to spice.
And when all of this comes together, you'll find yourself in the desert in a spice harvesting operation, and there might be another guild attacking you to get your spice. Whenever you get into combat in the desert of Arrakis, try to get it over with quickly, because not only are you fighting human combatants, but the planet Arrakis itself is the greatest protagonist there is. As you're fighting in the desert, there might be a sandstorm rolling in, and the sandworm will be attracted to the vibrations that you cause, so get it over with quickly.
Man, I can't wait till they actually detail how this whole sandworm thing actually plays out in the game, because every time they bring it up, it sounds like such a cool idea for a system. You make too much noise, you get in a fight with another guild, or you're going into a camp of bandits or whatever to try to get some loot or resources. If you just draw too much attention to yourself, the sandworm's gonna show up. I really want to see how this ends
it's
up
actually
playing out.
pretty
They have
cool.
alluded to in other interviews and such that the sandworm, there's only going to be certain areas of the world where you have to worry about the sandworm, but obviously
Okay.
at the same time, they're likely to put that sandworm in those areas that you're wanting to go in search for blueprints, because you're going to have to look out for blueprints in order to do a lot of crafting. It's not just progressing down a...
Oh yeah, here. Okay, these are the behemoths. Look at them.
All right, let's
The
watch
bear.
that.
You see that one very early on.
One
I
of
think it
two.
looks pretty
Oh,
cool.
why are there gonna be two ads,
Then you
man?
have this dude here.
All right, let's just watch it. Support.
You have a thunderbird, thunder rock. You have a hydra. You have another bear,
Come
a dire
on.
bear.
Come
This was
on.
a giant bear. This is a dire bear. A magma demon. One that I think looks the coolest, like based on how they position it, is this one. This looks so scary.
1/2,
this,
by the way.
This
There's
behemoth
another
looks so
ad
scary.
after
The way
this.
it's leaning over you. You look so tiny.
I bet the second
And it
ad
looks
is gonna
so
be
evil. This one is
5 minutes
amazing.
long.
Hardest one to get. But I mean,
I don't even know this person. Who the hell
what
is
else
this?
could I want to have, huh?
Magic, monsters, mastery.
Was that it? It says 1/2. Oh my god. this game, this ad. Well, it's funny to watch, but jeez. There's so much of this ad. It's so similar, all very similar too. Like they're all ads for different games. And we all know the gameplay's gonna be nothing like this. It's kind of funny. I hate it when they purposely choose the wrong one. Sometimes they purposely choose the wrong, like it's very obvious they purposely choose the wrong one. Okay, he's gonna hit the 555. Watch this. He's gonna hit the 555. No! No, you're 230! Oh my god, you fucking...
Choose
See?
the next level. Play now.
It's annoying. But the ad is very intriguing, not gonna lie. Like that
crafting tree, basically. You'll have to go out and find the things before you can actually make them. The spice is obviously going to be located in areas with the sandworm, but there will be areas that are relatively safe. Specifically, they talk about things like these rock formations, but then also you've got the protection of this dome system. Yeah, a lot of really cool, interesting things out of this particular interview. Like I said, it was a pretty darn good source of information. There was more than just this PC Gamer interview, though. Earlier in the year, the game's creative director sat down with several press outlets discussing various elements of the game, from the survival systems, its alternate history setting, and then just their broad vision for Dune Awakening. Here's some of the more interesting bits from that. They touched on the 3 primary survival systems. They said, we're very focused on a few tight core survival mechanics like shelter, sandstorm shelter in particular. Sandworms themselves are a giant threat in the world. If you walk on the sand, they will come. If you create vibrations, they will come. So you have to think about how you approach traversal in the game's world. And then obviously water. Those are the 3 key systems. Although they did mention that while there are a lot of survival elements that they want us to be thinking about, they also want to be sure to not make it overly punishing. We want players to feel these tensions all the time. We want them to be...
Well, that's what I was talking about. I hope the survival systems are not to the point that they just annoy me. Like, makes me want to quit the game.
Seriously thinking about, if I'm going across the open sand, I have to think about sandworms. If there's a sandstorm coming, I have to know if there's shelter nearby. If I haven't built something, I need to know where I can hide to get away from the sandstorm. So we're trying to create this tension, but we're also approaching it from the viewpoint of a little more accessibility, something like Valheim, where it's not like just going to kill you instantly.
I've never played Valheim, by the way.
Instantly, we have a little bit of leeway. So that tells me there will be plenty of forewarning when the sandworm is coming. That tells me if you're caught within a sandstorm, maybe it'll inhibit your movement or slowly deplete your health, but it's not gonna one-shot you. And then the water system, I presume and hope it's going to be something quite a bit different. They touched on crafting as well, saying in Dune Awakening, you're actually going to be looking for specific schematics that you can use to craft specific items. For example, if you have information that a botanical testing station somewhere in the desert was experimenting with a certain kind of tech, you'll head out there to find these schematics. So the crafting is a bit more bespoke. It is a little less tech tree driven and a lot more exploration driven.
That's
so it doesn't seem like maybe there will be some basic tools where you have a tech tree and you can progress down that to learn them, but I presume at least the higher value things are all going to be schematics based, where you actually have to go out into the world, find locations where these schematics are. Once you have those, you can then build it. Now, outside of this particular interview, there were additional interviews for various other outlets, but a lot of them is kind of were repeating the same bits of information, kind of treading over the same ground. I will also say, though, there was one other interview pretty recently, just the other month, and they touched on the MMO elements it's going to take on and what we can expect from it. So they said Dune Awakening features many of the classical MMO characteristics, but applied through the sandbox world building philosophy. You can build bases and customize them as you like, and you are not limited in how and where you can place them.
Like I said earlier, like base building is pretty interesting, but it's not my forte. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes.
Apart from special cases, players can explore the world alone or together with their friends, forming groups and guilds to take on dungeons and harvest spice. There's both technological
there's gonna be dungeons. That's good.
Advancement where players can learn to build new and
I wonder if the dungeons are gonna be open world, like in what's that new game? Throne of Liberty. Dungeons in the past used to be like that, like open world. Dungeons in older, like really older MMOs, older than WoW, they used to be open world and not instance.
Their technology through the acquisition of schematics.
So I wonder if they're gonna go back, they're gonna use the open world dungeons here.
As well as a robust skill and imprint system that allows players to define their very own playstyle. Now, they haven't really touched into what sort of variety of playstyles they're going to have in terms of, like, are we going to be able to fill roles like tanky roles and healing roles and damage dealing roles? They haven't really shown or detailed any of that, but there will be progression tied to playstyles. We also know we're going to have on offer both melee and ranged combat in this game, as well as that vehicular combat. And all this is sounding pretty interesting, and I am really liking what I've heard so far. Now, in terms of what's next for this game, well, Funcom will be at Gamescom again this year, during which we are expecting to learn and see even more about the game. The event begins in 3 weeks, starting on August 23rd. Now, typically, most of the big new reveals and announcements will happen within the first couple of days, so keep an eye out around then.
I'm going to cover that.
And how soon are we to being able to play Dune Awakening? Well, no release window as of yet. Tentatively, we're thinking sometime in
Probably
2024. Beta signups are currently
2025
available. It seems
probably.
like they're going to be running beta tests
I think
later this year.
2025.
I do think there's a decent chance, actually, that they announce some sort of a release window with whatever new stuff comes out of this year's Gamescom.
Looking at this, like, it's still very, like, if we go back, see, it's still very far along. Like, it's not polished yet, graphics wise, and
They announced some sort of a release window with whatever new stuff comes out of this year's Gamescom. I guess we'll be finding out soon enough. But that is going to do it for this video. Thanks to you for joining me as we take a closer updated look at Dune Awakening. Sounds pretty interesting. Looking forward to seeing some actual uncut gameplay. Hopefully at Gamescom. That'd be great. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
All right, so yeah, my final thoughts. Yeah, I think I'm pretty excited for Dune Awakening, but yeah, the concerns are the 1,000 players and the survival mechanics, the base building. Yeah, I don't know how that's all gonna play out. But anyway, don't forget to give Force Gaming a like and a subscribe. Link in the description below. So yeah, I'll see you again next time. Bye bye for now. Otskro, Jane.